By the time George Romero brought the Night of the Living Dead to hometown America, low-budget horror was turning a decent profit, especially at the drive-in theatres. Instead of necking in the back seat, kids actually watched Romero's films and paid to see them again and again. The special effects might have been atrocious, even for the time, but the fast-paced action and quirky delivery meant Romero quickly achieved cult status. My personal favourite has to be the 1978 original of Dawn of the Dead. It might be critically inferior to its predecessor, but the subtext is pure social satire. The setting is an American shopping mall, a familiar location for the suburban undead. The zombies rode the escalators and pushed their trolleys around and around because people love to shop, especially when they feel dead inside. A couple of decades later, and the genre was revamped for the next generation with faster, stronger zombies and a bigger budget. The new breed of zombies were more intelligent and began to communicate with each other. They even organised themselves into militias, hell-bent on hunting down every last uninfected survivor. Post-millennial zombies are the victims of prejudice. Apparently they have feelings too, and just because they like eating brains doesn't mean we should be intolerant. The zombie franchise has been subverted by the trolls of Hollywood. They humanised the undead. I wouldn't be surprised if one day they went the whole hog and threw in a little necrophilia for the ratings. In the 80s and 90s, the UK government was paranoid about BSE, commonly known as mad cow disease. For many years, the British countryside was filled with the stench of burning flesh. An official inquiry found that the cattle feed was to blame, which contained, amongst other things, bone meal, meat, and more than likely beef amongst the mix. The neurological symptoms of BSE include brain motor function damage and increased aggression within the cannibal herd. I think we all know how the state would react if the same thing happened to the general population. If you want a sneak preview of the zombie apocalypse, search for bath salt epidemic. A decade ago, America had its first zombie outbreak. Well, near enough. An artificial amphetamine made from household bath salts was turning the junkies crazy. Reports of violent attacks across the country skyrocketed. There was even a case of a bath salt zombie biting off somebody's face. If it had been a wild dog, the authorities would have put it down. The world is a breeding ground for disease, but the government likes to give it a helping hand. Now there are billions of us crammed together, many of whom remain part of an ongoing mass genetic experiment. This race is primed for contagion, and if anything like human BSE is lurking around the corner, it would mean absolute devastation. I've heard it only takes 3 days of empty supermarket shelves for society to collapse. Maybe that's why governments around the world have been paying farmers to burn their crops. Throw in the mass resignation of millions of truck drivers, and you begin to see the picture. Soylent Green is people, and even fast food these days is contaminated with human DNA. This summer will be hot and the people will be hungry, but only a zombie society would seriously ever consider turning cannibal. But once they did, there would be no turning back. The vast majority of the world would outright refuse and rather face starvation than consume another human. But then there are always the exceptions, those who will do anything to survive. All it takes is a plane crash up a mountain for some to have a feast. I'm not saying that a zombie apocalypse is around the corner. There will definitely be more food shortages, inflated prices, and a global supply chain crunch. But just in case cannibalism starts trending on Twitter, why not stock up on some supplies? Otherwise, you might just find yourself eating brains for breakfast, or even somebody eating yours.